Me to introduce today's guest speaker. I've considered adding it to my CV. May 7, 2018, introduced Thomas Thangaraj. Thomas is remarkable. I have known him for 20 years. He has been both a friend and a mentor to me in matters large and small. He came to the Candler School of Theology in 1988 to occupy the V.W. and Ruth Brooks Chair in World Christianity. He taught at Emory until 2008. He had been a mathematics major in college, but his interests turned from the precision of mathematics to the ambiguities and uncertainties of theology, and he earned degrees in theology at Serampore College and the United Theological College in Bangalore before completing a doctorate at Harvard in 1983. When he came to Candler, he changed all of us. He chipped away gently at our Western provinciality, nudged us to highlight the stunning diversity of all the world's Christianities, and informed us about the complexities of the many interreligious dialogues in which he participated. Professor Don Sayers is arriving at the airport this morning and so is not here yet, but he sent me an email instructing me to tell you how remarkable Thomas really was and is as a teacher, a scholar, a musician, and a liturgist, and a human being. Quantitative lists always merely skim the surface, but they can suggest a life, a rich life of the mind and the spirit. Thomas has written 13 books on theology, Christian spirituality, world Christianity, interreligious dialogue, and hermeneutics, the theory of what happens when we interpret texts and artifacts and films and music and each other. You can glimpse something of his imaginativeness simply through the title of a 1994 theological book he wrote called The Crucified Guru. He has written so far just short of 100 book chapters. He's a talented musician and hymn writer. He introduced the Candler faculty and students to a musical tradition that most of us had not known, and his hymns have been published in Tamil, English, Swedish, German, and Norwegian. 56 of his hymns have been recorded in a CD format, and he and Don shared some remarkable collaborations when he was at Emory. He's lectured in the US, in Germany, Japan, England, Wales, Scotland, the Philippines, Denmark, Taiwan, Cuba, and Northern Iowa. 9 times he took students from a variety of theological schools on academic tours in South India. He's been active in several interreligious conversations, and he organized a continuing academic conversation that brings together thinkers from Jewish, Hindu, Islamic, Buddhist, and Christian traditions. He's engaged right now in an autobiographical narrative that is at the same time a reflection on a human spiritual practice, one in which all of us have engaged. He wants to show that crossing boundaries can be a spiritual practice, crossing cultural and linguistic and religious and generational boundaries can result in a forming of the self that at its best, can make possible a creative negotiating of the diversity around us. I am honored to present my friend and colleague, Thomas Thangaraj.
Thank you, friends. Especially thanks to Brooks for this marvelous, but not totally true introduction of me. Thank you, Brooks. When he asked for my CV, I was a little hesitant. What is it he's going to pick up in that one? I'm glad you picked up all the good ones. So, thanks to Gray and others here, Gretchen, for inviting me. And I happen to be here because my daughter lives here in Decatur, and she had been pestering us to visit her. So we decided we'll come for a visit, long visit. So we are here. Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be able to speak to you. I see some familiar faces, my own colleagues, Ruth Smith, Helen Pearson, Brooks Olifield, Don Salier is on the way, and Paul is here, and Dr. Braber is here now. No. Okay, and Vernon, yes, I know quite a few people here. Thank you. Now, this was kind of suggested to me as the topic by John Gunneman, another colleague of mine. So I picked it up and decided to go with it. Now, you know, India, or anything about India, is different every time you are in a different place in India. So it's not the same. So to talk about India is always a problem. Because where are you from? Has to be asked. And so I do want to start with where I am from. I am from South India. That is different from North India. At least we South Indians claim that. We are very different from North India, we think. And in South India, I'm also a Christian from South India. That makes it very different. And I also come from a small town called Nazareth in South India. So I go around the world telling people I come from Nazareth. And they invariably ask me, can anything good come out of Nazareth? I tell them, come and see. So that Nazareth, you wouldn't believe, has a church like that. I'm sure the clocks were brought from England, and people in my village are very proud of their church and the steeple, and they always mention how they couldn't go a few feet higher to overtake another church nearby. They're always upset about that. So that's where I come from, and Nazareth would be somewhere here, you know, right here. Very close to Sri Lanka. Then I am to the capital of our country. So that's where I come from. So I need to warn you that this is a very biased perspective. Because it's me, as a Christian from South India, and of course Christians are different types. I'm one type, so these are all there. Now let's start. I had put in accepting this invitation 4 questions I wanted to address. This is only to discipline myself from going all over the place about India. Just 4 questions. First question is Christianity in India purely a product of Western colonial enterprise? That question, I put that because I meet very often people in the West who think that Christianity Christianity owes to Christianity in India owes so much to the Western colonial enterprise. I want to show it's not. Is Indian Christianity predominantly governed by membership drive and religious conversion efforts, as Hindu nationalists in India would like to portray? I would say yes and no. We'll talk about it. How do we understand the various incidents of Hindu-Christian conflicts in various parts of India? That's tough, but we'll try. Finally, as an Indian Christian theologian, how do I envision possibilities for the future? Basically for the church and for the nation as a whole. Now, to answer the first question, we need to really do a survey of the religious history of India and also the religious history of Christianity. So let me do a very quick survey, because we don't have too much time to cover India with 1.2 billion people. Okay. Now, let's look at this picture of India. Now, Hindus make up 80% of the population, and Muslims 14, and Christians 2.3. So you can see it's basically a Hindu majority nation with a sizable population of Muslims and a tiny population of Christians. The Sikhs and Jains and others are less than 2%. That's why I haven't mentioned them here. Now, this is not new, because religious plurality was a real fact in India. India never had just one religion. It was a land of many religious traditions. The name Hinduism is actually a name for the federation of religions, not one religion. There are scholars who would argue if you use the word religion itself is wrong in the Indian context, because that word came into being in the Western setting with its own definition. It may not fit India at all. But let's use that. But then it's a federation of many religions. What kept it together, as often Hindus claim, is they believe in this basic tenet, which is truth is one, people call it by many names. This is a very strong, prevalent idea. If your God is called Jesus, okay, because people call it by different names. These are only names and forms that are different. The reality is only one, which of course philosophers would call Brahman, and Muslims may say Allah, anything you can say, because nothing can be said of that reality. That's why you can say anything. That's the logic there. Because you cannot say anything about it, you better say whatever you want to say. That's how we maintain the federation together. Then new religions emerged. Buddhism came as a protest, Jainism too, but these were coming from the Hindu roots, so they were incorporated into the federation. So Hindu philosophy includes Buddhism as its one of the wings. So in that sense, these religions are not outside. They are already inside the federation. A few more. Even before Christ, a small community of Jews had moved to India, to the southern, more western part of India. Even now they are there. I have visited once, two places. in Calcutta and in Kerala. There are some places where they live looks so much like the pictures I see in the Bible about Jerusalem and other places. So they lived there peaceably with no conflicts with anyone. Then the Zoroastrians came in the 10th century. They also flourished as a minority with no problems at all. Then Islam arrived soon after it was founded, and it came to the context of Muslim traders, to be followed also by raiders who raided Hindu temples for the jewelry and all those stuff. Then came much more organized, coming up to India to control India and rule over India, what we call the Mughal dynasty, which began with Akbar. They actually, in a sense, brought the single country India idea. Because we were never one India, we were several kingdoms. Because they came to rule over most of it, it looked like one nation. And Akbar the Great was a great ruler, and he believed in religious unity. He married a Hindu among one of his queens, and also wanted to start a new religion, which is a mixture of all. He had the experts come and sit in his court and discuss this. And we know that you can't bring religions together like that. It doesn't work that way. So it collapsed. Then some later arrivals, Guru Nanak, the Sikh religion, was started in 1498. They occupied most of northwest India. Then Baha'i faith came in the 19th century. They have a beautiful temple in Delhi. You come to Delhi, please visit that marvelous looking lotus-shaped temple. Then Christianity, of course, had actually come much earlier. St. Thomas, the disciple of Christ, is supposed to have come. When I was a student in the 60s, it was simply thought of as a legend. Interesting stories, but no. Today's scholarship has more probability built into it. Because there is a tradition of St. Thomas Christians in Kerala. So one can say, to claim that genealogy, there must be something possible that St. Thomas came. He was supposed to be an architect and was asked by the king to build a palace. He, as a good Christian, went and spent the whole money on the poor and did not build the palace. And the king got mad and put him in prison. And during he was in prison, the king had a vision, a dream, in which the king was taken to heaven. And he saw the most beautiful building there. He asked what it is. And they said, oh, that's what Thomas has built for you. So he woke up and released Thomas. That's how Christianity came. This, I think, more legendary. But he definitely could have come. See, in a sense, Christianity was in India before the British ever knew about India, about Christianity. So that clearly shows the origin of Christianity in India. But then we have the later history, from when Catholics arrived with the Portuguese and the Portuguese king. Asking Francis Xavier to come and, as a missionary, and he walked through the shores of India and converted people in large numbers, large numbers. He couldn't baptize them easily, so he had to have a bucket full of water and throw on all of them. And I say, I baptize you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. That's it. This may be a legend too. But one thing is true, if you walk down the shores of India, east and west, most shore towns will have a Catholic church. You would definitely see that. And the large population of fisher folk are Roman Catholics. So it's that had happened, and then other missionaries came and worked after that and established institutions. So we have half the Christian population in India is Roman Catholic. Now, then come the Protestants. They came in 1706 with one guy called Ziegenbalg, sent by the King of Denmark to land in a place which the East India Company branch of Denmark was owning. So he was thinking of sending him there, but the East India Company would not let him land. Because I usually jokingly say, the British India, East India Company said, we are here to plunder, not to preach. Okay, so they didn't let the missionary come down, but the local people found him there and brought him in, welcomed him, that's very Hindu. And then he started his mission with the translating of the Bible and that. There's a lot more history to that. Let's not go there. That's Ziegenbalg. And the government was so pleased to, they made a stamp, postal stamp for him. Then the British Empire. As the British began their rule, Christian missionary enterprise definitely took on a colonial appearance. It became, because the colonizers were wanting ways by which they can keep people under control. One way is actually to get them, it's all right, more Christians, it's better. Because the Christians, with their attachment to the missionaries, did feel more attached to the empire. Because they are our people, they are Christians. So that, I think, there were political motives, religious motives, and many missionaries came. The number of missionaries increased, so we got the 2.3% of the population. Now, there was one, William Carey, a famous man who built the first college in India, in Sarampur. He came, he's a Baptist missionary who had a real desire to open India to Christian faith. So he wrote a pamphlet asking the British to use their means for the conversion of heathens. Of course, those days, heathens was a common word for us. Okay, that's the problem of the times. So he wrote that and people came and he did a lot of work. Unfortunately, the Protestant Christians themselves began to see their Christian responsibility in colonial terms. That's unfortunate. But they are our examples. So they are doing it. So we'll do it too. And we'll do, in a sense, the same kind of superiority, inferiority paradigm worked with Indian Christians too. So Indian Christians thought we are superior, the Hindus are inferior. We are more cultured, they are not cultured. We are worshipping pure God, they are not, they are worshipping idols. All this kind of thing is linked to the colonial perspective of the world. Now, but when the independence movement came, when it started, Christians began to see, now, colonial is not the right way to go. Because we are Indians. We are not the British. So I think they found two ways to correct that. One is to start their own churches. The man on the left, on the top, is Armanayakam Sattamale. He, in 1858, the same year where the mutiny, so-called mutiny, which were the soldiers got into trouble with the British, that same year, he walked out from a missionary's house in opposing his colonial attitude and started his own church and named it the Indian Church of the Only Savior. That story is a very interesting story of how he was in a post-colonial, in a sense, in his activity. Now, the other solution they thought was, why leave this whole evangelism to the white people? In fact, in many places, the gospel came first from Indians who had already become Christians before a white missionary would arrive. Actually, in my town, Nazareth, it was the Christians who had accepted, Hindus who had accepted Christianity 200 miles away in the north. They traveled and taught to our people. And then the Anglican missionaries arrived to make it into a shape of a church. So, Bishop Azariah is he's actually about 15 miles from my hometown. And he became the first Indian bishop, Anglican bishop. He, as a young man, started Indian Missionary Society, funded by Indians, manned by Indians, working in India. And the same way he started another one, National Missionary Society, Indians working in India for evangelism. So this was their way of getting out of the colonial perspective. So what I've said so far is just to highlight how Christianity has come in different ways, not definitely by only colonial expansion. Because this has become very important now because there is a kind of neo-colonialism which has come to us through globalization. So Hindus are more strengthened in their thinking. Christians are, the West. We represent the West. So that means if you are a Christian, you are not an Indian. That talk is all possible because they still think we are a product of colonial enterprise. Now, this question definitely needs a yes and a no. Your country's contribution to my country? Yeah, fundamentalism. Christian fundamentalism was one of the things you exported to my country, which was already there, partly because of the missionary enterprise. It got strengthened by all these American preachers who would come to India and preach on tourist visa. And the government liked it because money was flowing. So the government didn't worry about that. See, I think that process had begun to give a fundamentalist, very aggressive evangelistic flavor to Indian Christianity. And to add to that, there were Indians who wanted to ape the American counterparts. So there is an Indian Oral Roberts, there is an Indian Billy Graham, there is an Indian Benny Hinn, and there's not yet an Indian Joyce Myers. Joyce Myers, there's one lady who preaches He's on 24-hour broadcast in India. You can watch her 24 hours. Preaching in Tamil, in my mother tongue. First time I saw that, I didn't know Joy speaks Tamil. No, then they showed the audience, all white people sitting there. Okay, this is something else. So that is one thing which has led to the projection of Christianity as a membership drive. Because we are very serious about it. At the end of the crusade, we asked people to sign cards. I have accepted Christ as my Savior. It's a kind of a planned, organized effort to increase membership. Then, Christian individuals in India have now started missionary organizations. This has nothing to do with the established church. There is the Church of South India, Church of North India, Lutheran churches, Baptist churches. This is individuals. In my congregation, where I attend, there are at least 3 people who have their own missionary agency and send people to North India, because North India is still in the dark. We have been enlightened. And their way of describing North Indian tribals sounds so familiar. Isn't that how the Westerners described Indians those days? So that same thing is happening, and they are very firm on preaching. And any attack by Hindu nationalists actually ignites kind of a martyr complex. So people think, oh, we are being martyred, we must increase our evangelism more. End time is coming, let's get everybody into heaven. So this whole thing is also partly due to the Hindu opposition. But much more than that, all those who are interested in membership drive appeal to the Constitution of India. And they could. Here is the Constitution. It's a lovely Constitution when you read it. We, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. Wow. The best of the possible worlds, right? Okay. To secure to all its citizens justice, liberty, equality, fraternity. Sounds like France. Something like that. We got it from there. Our leaders were Western educated, they knew these things, they helped us to formulate. Then comes fundamental rights. The state shall not discriminate against any citizen on grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth, or any of them. So we have it there, freedom of religion. To add to that, the freedom of religion, of conscience and free profession practice. The 3 important words that are used, you have the right to profess, practice, and propagate. But my computer tells me that's a wrong spelling. No, that's the right spelling. Practice. Computer is wrong. Okay. So propagate, that word was added. When they framed the Constitution, because of the Western influence and the English tradition, propagation, yes. So you are free to profess, practice, and propagate. So people who are engaged in evangelism would say, I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm only following the Constitution. So they become more aggressive because we have the right to do this. We should also say no. While all defend the constitutional right to propagate, most Christians go about their daily lives without active and aggressive evangelism. people live together. I live in a street. My left side neighbor is a Hindu, and facing me are Hindu families. On the right hand side, I have Muslim families. The Muslim who lived there would invite me on Ramadan. He comes to our home, brings a gift for Ramadan. So we started going on Christmas Day to his home to wish him. So people have generally lived peaceably. So the whole issue we are talking about is a minority issue in one way. Of course, the Eastern Orthodox are not that keen on mission societies going and preaching and all that, Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, Armenian Orthodox, Coptic. So they are not a threat. So the Hindu nationalists actually would say, why don't you be like them? Because the word Syrian, which is the Syrian Orthodox Church, Syrian is also a caste name. So if somebody asks the Eastern Orthodox, what caste you belong to, they would say Syrian, which is an upper level caste, not low. So that's how they blended into India. Roman Catholics have done, but they have not been that aggressive as the Protestants. And after Vatican II, there's a lot more appreciation of India, Hinduism, and interreligious dialogue. Protestants themselves have been actively involved. That's why I said, I'm from Nazareth. Nobody in my church would ever agree with any of the things I'm telling you today. Because they would say, this is too liberal a Christian. The man has backslided. So we had missionaries who were interested in promoting interreligious dialogue, including Stanley Jones, a Methodist missionary from the United States, who had roundtable conferences with people of other religions. Of course, he had the hidden agenda, hoping they would finally come to Christianity. But he had dialogue. And Protestant leaders, such as P.D. Devanandan, Emeritus Thomas, S.J. Samatha, who was my own teacher, they have been pioneers. The dialogue department of the World Council of Churches was, in a sense, induced by Indian reality to start a dialogue department. And first director was S.J. Samatha. So that part of India is different. Then there are Christian institutions, schools and colleges where there is no discrimination. I mean, Hindus gladly send their children to Christian schools. Whereas I am a little sometimes worried about the Christian schools being too Christian. They are happy about it. I had a Hindu friend who told me nice things about the school where my children and his children go. I said, yeah, I like that school, but the only thing is the first period every day, first class, is Bible, and everybody has to attend. So I said, I don't like the Bible being taught like that in that school. He said, oh, no problem. I'm so happy my son is studying Bible. So, that's how they take it. Now, Hindu reformers, those who reformed Hinduism, highly valued the Christian education. The President of India, Radhakrishnan, was a student of Madras Christian College. So the Christian institutions were not producing Hindus, Christians. It was producing thinkers, different professionals. Actually, it produced Hindus who became much more Hindu. Because they began to go and study their religion carefully. Now, How do we understand the incidents of Hindu conflicts? Well, I talked about how we are together at the time. There were times of crisis. Of course, the first crisis was the division of India and Pakistan, which led to a riot. The second was the assassination of Prime Minister Indira Gandhi and the Hindus and Sikhs. The Hindus went to kill so many Sikhs in Delhi and other parts. These were unfortunate stories. Then we have the greatest one, more recent one, which is 1992, when a Muslim, crowds of people went and rioted and brought a mosque down to the ground, claiming that the mosque was built on a place where there was a Hindu temple. And Rama's birth, the King Rama's birthplace, which are a mythology, but they take it as history. So this is a turning point in Indian history. Because I have addressed multi-religious groups many times in my state, in my town and other places. After December 2nd, 6th of 1992, whenever I stood before a multi-religious audience, they were suspicious. What is he here for? Because this idea that others are coming and taking over had become prevalent. Because they know I am a minister in the church, so there is something going on here. Why aren't we brought together? This may be the latest style they have, latest method they have to get us. Actually, one Hindu in one of these things, he said, I said, I know, sir, what you do on Sunday mornings. He said, really? Tell me, what do we do? You all gather together and discuss plans to get us. It was almost like an army in a briefing, sitting in the situation room. What to do next? Of course, I asked him, so you have been to church? No, sir. But I know that's what's happening. So it's that, have happened after 1992. Then there were attempts to pass laws prohibiting religious conversion. This happened in 3-4 states, including my state, Tamil Nadu. But it didn't click. They were not passed or passed and revoked right away. They were on the reason that it is coercive, that people are compelled to convert. That you cannot do because we have freedom of religion. So that was the issue. Here are people using means which are not ethically right, like education, medicine, or rice. Some of us used to be called rice Christians. We became Christians because we got a lot of rice from the missionaries. So that attempt has been going on, but now they know it doesn't work that way. A tragic case was the killing of a missionary in North India. It was a missionary from Australia working among the poor. And just this, the toxic thing has come into the community. So there is this enmity idea. So he was burnt alive in his van with 2 children. That was a tragic event. Then Christmas 2007, a place in Orissa, now it's called Odisha, people were killed just because they were converts on a flimsy reason of their leader was attacked by the Christians. All kinds of reasons were brought. That was a very tragic event. There have been attacks even now. In my own area, there have been churches which have been attacked by Hindus. Pastors have been attacked, assaulted, things like that. So it is so public now that in a village I drove through, I saw a signboard like this. Those who are engaged in conversion efforts are not allowed into our village. I would have never seen an Indian village having a signboard like that. You cannot enter. Because they had a lot of other kinds of rules about the entrance, low caste, high caste, those things. But this is new. That a village will announce, Christians, don't come here. That's what it means. Don't come here. So that's the kind of situation we are in. But at the same time, there is a growing number of protests by Christians because appealing to the Constitution, so stop atrocities on Christians in Orissa, stop attacking churches. This is going on. See, even though a martyr complex comes, it doesn't stay long because it's our country. It's our government. It's not Nero who is killing us. We can't do anything about it. This is our country. We can do something about it. So let's protest. My own state, some of the leaders have been so articulate about the tragedy of this and opposing that. The Church of South India, which I belong to, the moderator has written a very strong, long letter to the Prime Minister saying we can't let this happen in our country. And the National Council of Churches has also registered its protest. Roman Catholic churches have done that. But the government is so slow. The problem is we have Modi, who sounds so beautiful when he's out of the country, and so awful inside the country. And so, this has to be done. Mr. Prime Minister, your silence kills. So that's the tragic situation now. Let me mention a few issues with religious conversion. See, religious conversion is never in India an individual converting to something. Every conversion is a community event. That means if you are becoming a Christian, you are leaving one community and joining another community. Because Hindus thought there are many gods and you can choose the god you like, Ishta Devata, the god you like you can have. No, it's not simply that. You are moving out of this community to become something else. So that's one major issue. The other is denationalization of the convert. Assuming that by becoming a Christian, you have lost your national identity. You have become Western. Partly so. Partly so. How? I mean, Christians took on certain Western customs, Western music, things like that. But denationalization, that's too much. Unfortunately, Mahatma Gandhi, with this idea of Swadeshi, that is, of one's own nation, when he was fighting against the British, he used that concept. Our cotton is our cotton. We don't want to send it to Manchester, get shirts from them. But he used it for religion too. This is our religion. He was not very happy about conversions. I mean, he talked about, I'm a Hindu, I'm a Christian, I'm a Hindu, I'm a Muslim. That was a good talk, but behind Gandhi, there was this feeling, if you are an Indian, why change your religion? What's the problem? So, if you're changing, then you are losing your national identity. Devaluation of one's own past religion. That Christians are partly to be blamed, because how do we justify ourselves as Christians when 80% are Hindu, when we are all Hindus? How do you justify? You justify by totally negating Hindu faith, at least in talk. But we are very much Hindus in several things we do. But we proclaim ourselves to be not Hindus. Even today, I mean, it's very interesting. When somebody asks me, oh, are you from India? Yes. Are you Hindu? I can feel it in my body. I say, no, I'm a Christian. See, that's how we grew up. To be a Christian means something, just to be defended. So, that part of it is something that contributes to the conversion idea as a problem. Then destabilization of the caste arrangement. This is one of the major things that is now happening. Because when people from the lower castes become Christians, they are not going to take it anymore. Or even if they take it, others think that they may not take it. In many cases, they're still working as, a lower level, but the higher castes think they are the threat. Partly because caste has become a political issue. Caste is no longer a religious issue in India, because Christians also practice caste. So, caste is a political issue. Democratic politics can use caste, can actually help caste to flourish. There are more caste associations in India now than before, because caste becomes a lobbying technique. So that's where we are. So when Christians kind of try to talk about equality, I mean, they don't practice themselves in the church, but it's a threat to the social arrangement. And then the question about conversion through questionable means. I mean, there may have been some cases where the help given with a kind of sling attached, why don't you become a Christian, could be the case. But in most cases, Christians rushed to places of suffering without expecting those people to become Christians. That's a good record we have. In our colleges those days, they had, in the Christian colleges, they had two: religious instruction and moral instruction. Religious instruction for Christian students, moral instruction for non-Christian students. When I was a local pastor, my principal in the college invited me to take a class for the non-Christians, moral instruction. I asked him, is that what aren't you thinking about religious education? No, moral education. You go. I went there. I told the students, hey guys, I'm a Christian pastor. I work in the church. The principal asked me to do this class. What do you want to talk about? You can decide and we'll talk about it. All of them said, sir, now that you are a Christian pastor, teach us Christianity. I had a wonderful time teaching Christianity in a totally unbiased manner, without inviting anybody to embrace Christianity. That was a good discipline for me that day, to talk about Christianity without the string attached. So it's conversion through questionable means is bloated out of proportion, blown up. I mean, it's too much talk about it, whereas in fact it doesn't happen that way. What can happen is when the suffering or helped, there may be a little stone on the wall. This was the help of Christians from that can happen. Now, one of our leading thinkers, Tharoor, discussing this, he said, the really important debate is not about conversions, but between the unifiers and the dividers. Between those who think all Indians are us, whichever God they choose to worship, and those who think that Indians can be divided into us and them. See, that's the issue. But behind this is another issue, which is these Hindus, nationalists, are really trying to unite India. They are not trying to divide. They want everybody to claim themselves as Hindu and thus become one India. So there's kind of interesting paradox there. But they are dividing, hoping that we'll become one. Final question. I'll run through that.
Well, you've got half an hour, don't worry about it.
Oh, I do?
Yeah, till 1 o'clock.
Oh no, but they must have some time to talk to me.
That's right.
Now, Christians in India have to rethink, I think. And people like me must engage in teaching. One way I teach about evangelism, I just want to give you a short one. Announce the good news without announcements. Because Gandhi once said, a rose flower doesn't go about telling everybody I smell good. It simply smells good. So, announce without announcements. Announce while affirming. While you affirm the faith of the other person, affirm the piety of the other person, affirm the obedience of the other person to the divine, announce the good news. Peter did that in Acts of the Apostles, chapter 10. Peter did that. I know that God shows no partiality. Anyone in any nation who believes in God and does good is acceptable to God. Then he said, let me also tell you the story of Jesus. So that's without attachment. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, you have to work without attachment to results. What does that mean? For evangelism is so focused on membership drive. If you announce. It may produce a Mahatma Gandhi, or it may produce a village Christian. All possible. Announce when asked. That's tough. Don't be in a hurry. If they ask you, what is it that keeps you going? Say, this is what keeps me going. There's a lovely text in 1 Peter. It says, be ready at all times. Give an answer to those who ask of you the hope that is in you. You have a hope, don't you? If people ask about that, tell them that. But do it with gentleness and reverence. That's the text in the Bible. So I have to get my Christian friends to, come on, look at that text. You say you love the Bible, come on, here it is. So that teaching is necessary. Strengthening the secular. Because the word secular has been defined in the beginnings as inclusive of all religions, not anti-religious. People in India never thought the word secular meant anti-religious. But now, that has become a dirty word. It is connected to secularism as an ideology. No, this is supra-religious, inclusive of all religions. I think that has to be brought out much more in the future. Yeah, simple thing, but tough. Freedom of religion means all religions, not just your own. All these things I'm talking about seem very relevant here, right? Doesn't it? Yeah. Think about it. Yeah, the leading political party, its leaders could change their perspective if there is enough pressure from the grassroots. So the Prime Minister's silence actually gives you some idea that they are not happy with the situation. They don't know what to do with it. They may need some help from the people. So all the protest and the writings, speeches I've heard so many speeches on YouTube asking the Prime Minister, come on, relax, man. There's more to life than what you think it is. Caste could be delinked from its stronghold, but it's tough, I tell you. It's tough because it is political. If it was simply religious, why is it Christians are still practicing caste? Political. So, the only solution would be people marry across caste in such large numbers, nobody is able to say, oh, I don't know what caste I belong to. My father was this, my grandfather was that. We haven't come to that stage. We still believe in arranged marriages. So it's taken a long time. The effects of globalization, which lead to inequality, has to be addressed. All the invitation to unity is to deal with this globalization force, which is questioning ourselves, our culture, our religions, our country. I read an interesting article by Chuck Bauman. He writes like this: broadening the conversation about anti-minority violence to include the effects of globalization helps move us, I believe, in the right direction. Such a move is demanded by the analysis of violence against Christians, who far more than in the case of Sikhs and Muslims, stand as proxies for those very effects. So you are really opposing globalization, but you are barking at the wrong tree. Very interesting analysis. The last one. For all this to happen, there need to be more intra-religious conversation. Hindus need to talk to one another about this. Christians need to talk to one another about this. Muslims need to. Sikhs need to. So, what is needed is a self-critical attitude to one's own religion. One of the statements I love so much is this. A Jewish rabbi once said, I do not care what religion you belong to, as long as you are ashamed of it. Wonderful. I wish Indians are ashamed of their religions. Because that's what is needed. And we as a nation have not dealt with this. whether dealing with that way would have helped or not, we never had departments of religion in any of the universities. Can you believe that? Because we said inclusive of our religion, which meant there can be a department of Christian studies, there's a department of Hindu philosophy, but to think of religion as an issue in an inter-religious setting has never been. So I always feel that we have not produced enough young people who are critical of their own and others. I think that may be one future direction which India has to take. How do we develop a critical attitude? But of course, it doesn't happen only in religion, it has to happen in everything. Unfortunately, we are in an educational setting now in India which is so much focused on number of marks you get and the next best course you enter, which leads to a best job. Our children are killing themselves, memorizing, learning, day in and day out, so that they get 100 out of 100. Future would be to relax, to let them think and work towards a better India. But it's always possible. Thank you.
And this is great. We have 20 minutes left for some conversation here. John Buga is going to run around with the mic. Those of you who aren't used to this, we do need to have you speak into the mic for the sake of the webcast, because it will only pick up what's mic'd. And Thomas can help by repeating questions too. Thanks, John.
I was fascinated with the caste system. Still is in effect in India, you say, and the Christians are more of a target. But what is the role of the Muslim community in the caste system? Is there anything?
They also have caste.
Yeah. And the
among themselves.
Yeah. So I'll tell you a short story. We were when in 1969, our church here had a group of Indian students coming to visit. And we volunteered to have one in this exchange program run out of Vermont, this international experiment, international living. So we came and they said, well, here's the list of people, and your guy, your student is named James Thomas. I said, oh no, it's the Indian. We're looking for the Indian guy. And he was from Kerala. And became a good friend and went back. He was a 19-year-old student, went to medical school. Took him around, and Emory tried to get him interested in cardiology. Long story short, he became a cardiac surgeon in Bangalore and then eventually in Delhi, and is now the chancellor of a place called the D.Y. Patel University in New Mumbai. Mm-hmm. So it's just an interesting experience to have had. Yeah, that's another question. That's right.
Can I give a short response to that? Thank you very much for sharing that. One of the problems I face when people talk about India and Hinduism, caste becomes a central issue, which is, in one way, it is so much a central issue, the whole India is reduced to caste problem. You are not doing that, I'm saying. So one has to be careful not to reduce India to caste. Unfortunately, this is called Orientalism, where Western scholars reduced us to their categories. Now, that's not the case. Hindus are using those categories. So the nationalists do want caste to continue. So there's that going on there. Yes. John?
Oh, Thomas, we miss you. In the university and especially in the School of Theology, the things that you're sharing with us today, you shared with us and made an enormous impact on a whole range of people, some of which you never heard from. But I do want to ask about music. I don't know whether Brooks introduced you, I think. Did you, Brooks, did you say anything about his rock? Okay, good. Well, now my question is, do you see anything by way of shared cultural aesthetics, especially in the musical realm, that give you some hope in the midst of this complexity?
The younger generation has bought into Western music more than ever before. People are playing guitar, you know, the loudest possible guitar, the loudest possible drum. So that is one way of bringing people together. And there is also a renewal of classical music at the center. There's quite a renewal of classical music, and you can see classical music festivals and concerts going on everywhere. And of course, classical music again is there are two. One North Indian, one is South Indian. These two are slightly different, not much, but they are different. And there's a move by South Indian states, I hear, to become a nation of our own, get rid of the North Indians, and we can have our own. There was an attempt much earlier, and that didn't work. Now people are talking about it. But the unity in music now has become global, actually. I mean, it's not simply Indian, it's global. Some of the young artists are sounding like anybody here. I mean, you know, Michael Jackson hit the chart so early in India, and then all the rap singers or people do now write nice rap. Even my son wrote some rap. We got them recorded. He doesn't want to own it now, as he's grown up. So it's much more a global phenomenon that is happening than bringing India together. It's a global. I mean, Christianity, for example, is now so much caught up with so-called American praise music, which is spreading all over. Of course, I have a low opinion about praise music. That's my bias. But things are happening where many are brought together in terms of music. So it might be a way. That you need to come and perform some improvisation on my raga. That's what he used to do on Sunday mornings in chapel. Yeah.
I have two questions. The first question, I hope if you don't mind my asking,
Okay.
what was the reason that you converted to Christianity, you or your family? And the second question, why Christianity is concentrated in South India compared to North India?
First question is, I may be a sixth generation Christian.
But do you remember why your first generation became?
Oh, that time it was not individual idea. It was a village idea. My whole village became Christian. And they changed the name of the village to Nazareth. So it's in large groups, people, what they used to call mass conversions. Because you can't get out of your community. So take a whole community and say we're Christian now. So that's how it happened. And I don't know the exact reasons why my great grandfather became Christian, but I know for sure my great-grandfather, my grandfather, my father, they were all ministers, so committed to church. And I had no escape, I had to become a minister. So that's one. The second question, just remind me.
Why is it concentrated in South India?
Okay. Oh, yeah. See, it's very interesting to observe certain caste groups are more open to what Christianity preached than other caste groups. In South India, somehow, certain caste groups in my area immediately pulled in. They were not the lowest, but they saw that as a way of a release. And also, the atrocities of the British was more in the north than in the south. So the southern view of the British Empire was not negative. Actually, when the independence struggle began, South India was so slow to join the movement. You know, Gandhi belongs to the central and North India. It's only when Mahatma Gandhi toured South India, people saw the point and became supporters. So there were a lot of South Indians who didn't want British to leave, only be a little more benevolent. Yeah, that's what they thought. That's why Christianity was not seen as a Western imposition, but as part of a good thing that's happening. That's why the South Indian reality is such. And also there were more colleges and schools started in South India, quite a bit, and that had its influence. Not necessarily immediately people becoming converted. In my state, it's about 8%, and 25% in Kerala. That's Eastern Orthodox, yeah. So that large number is because of the Orthodox tradition. They are from the first century. So I think South Indians on the whole, and that's also one of the reasons why today the South Indians viewing North Indians as savages to be converted is very painful. You know, it's a painful thing. I've heard Indian missionaries coming and addressing my church, describing North Indian, pockets of North India. Oh man, I sat there. Am I in the 21st century or the 18th, 17th century? That's another part. Sir.
You know, very, very few people could distill thousands of years of history into religiously 60 minutes of lecture, which you did. I appreciate that. At the same time, when you see, it is not an Indian history, it's a tapestry. It goes through many degenerating processes. This mutation is a part of a biological phenomenon. So what you were 6,000 years ago, you will not be the same over the coming years. So some of the explanations are given in the very process of mutation. At the same time, we blame the caste, but to me, caste is one example of a human prejudice. That means by 12 o'clock, if you remove all the caste, from India, by 1 o'clock, they will create their own caste. Because that's the way we are. Number two, that the challenge of India then, which is united and disunited state of cultures, now that challenge is transferring to this country. Because here we are having so many, how we are going to handle all the different nationalities, different religions, different ways of thinking, and this is further substantiated because as a priest, I've officiated about 200 plus Hindu Christian marriages? What is going to happen to their children? So that will be certain. And one more thing I want to add, which you did not do, is the prejudice of the color which is in India. Like the British have said, more than Indians, more than Britishers, the Indians are discriminating against the black color. So this is such a complexity that only one thing I can see, they will fight with each other, they will kill themselves, and the history will start all over again. I don't see any other possibility in the future about that one. We have three kinds of people: the educated people who do not speak anything, schooled people who are not educated but they make loud noises, and the uneducated, non-schooled people who will go with the wisp of the wind. If it goes this way, they'll go this way. If it goes this way, and that is the kind of status we are in right now.
Thank you, thank you. I am a little more hopeful than you, because I think, you see, the problem with caste is it's connected to birth. Anything connected to birth, and also color. I mean, it started as color. So it's so difficult to eradicate that. I mean, whenever I teach here, I help my students in the class to understand caste by talking about the black-white problem in this country. Because it's birth. Intercaste children go to the lower caste in the two, not the upper caste. So it's complicated. But when we look at our history, the human history, we always found ways to get out of the mess. We found ways to get out of the British mess, and we'll find a way to get out of the present mess in India. Well, I'm much more. At that point. I agree with Mahatma Gandhi, and we should, start with the goodness of humanity, not anything else. There's so much goodness in humanity, which you forget. The bad gets more press, I know. Why is it that every page has Trump? Because we just want to talk about bad. Yes. So, I'm hopeful. Paul?
Thank you, Thomas. This has been really wonderful. Want to return you a little bit to the issue of globalization, and that Indians live everywhere in the world now, in numbers and an influence that is vastly expanded over what one would have found 50 or 100 years ago. And presumably they also carry their religious traditions with them, and they may undergo some transformations in the diaspora context. But and so there are Indian Christians living everywhere, just as there are Hindus and Jains and Sikhs and so forth. I wonder if you'd say a little bit about what you see on the horizon with respect to globalization, which benefits some groups and penalizes others, and how are people in India thinking about that?
See, in living here, I have observed both Indian Christians and Hindus enjoying the fruits of globalization here, and also enjoying the fruits of globalization their people have, but they somehow promote their ancient view of their religions back home. There's a lot of support to Hindu nationalism from non-resident Indians. Same way, there's a lot of support to fundamentalist Christian preachers from Indian Christians living in this country. One of the reasons with the Indian Christians, I think, is they feel so bad that they are doing so well, and their people in India are not. So they have to have some religious faith which will say it's okay. And all fundamentalist preachers say it's okay. Yes, God blesses the rich. God makes the poor become wealthy. It's all God's doing. Rejoice. Sorry, yeah, people in India, they are not doing well because they are not Christian yet. What an idea. I mean, this is, so this kind of, their globalization at that point has not helped all Christians to see that. Of course, there are many Indian Christians here who would differ with that kind of view. And also the Hindus who have been here are also watching their religion being studied, analyzed, talked about in ordinary manner. Some don't like that. Yeah. These are holy things. Because we never had universities where holy things were talked about. There was no department of religion. So holy things were limited to the monasteries, the seminaries. Here it's just people write all kinds of books about all religions. They seem to have no respect for anybody. That's the impression people get. And Paul knows this quite well. So I would say the globalization process is helping in ways in which people become rich. I mean, Indians are doing well under globalization. On one side, the poor are becoming poor, but they're flourishing. I mean, I live in a place where it used to be like a slum just in front of my house. No longer so. All big mansions. What happened? The children of the poor entered college, did engineering, and some of them are in the US. So things have changed. So how the